Hi, I'm Keegan. This is GM Talks. I'm joined with Scarlett again. Brennan is a little sleepy, so he won't be joining. We're on our Discord that you can find in the description. It's an open Discord for anyone to join, and Scarlett's up at like, what, 6 a.m.?
No, it's 2 a.m. So
Oh,
it's
2 a.m.
not that late. Only
Okay.
European summertime, yeah. Is there an echo? Because it looks like my mic lights up whenever you speak, but I'm not sure.
I don't hear an echo. I hear static when your mic comes on, though. Not a huge deal. But we're going to just talk about some games, and I have a fun one already. So.
Oh yeah?
For work, I got to run the original D&D as a team building exercise for my team.
That's interesting.
It was my idea, and I pitched it to my manager, and they're like, okay, a game is team building. And then they all got super into it, and I was running B1, Into the Unknown.
Nice.
And there's a lot of 70s in there. So there's a room where there's supposed to be a statue, and it's supposed to be a salacious woman statue. And I'm like, I read that description, I'm like, nope, not for the work game. Titty statues gotta go.
Yeah, that's fair. I've ran Pathfinder games for like library events and stuff like that. Because obviously also cut out some of the stuff. Pathfinder is a bit better than what I imagine like old school D&D is, but there's still some stuff.
I do like how Into the Unknown is formatted overall, but yeah, that part was just like, okay, so I changed it to be like a statue of the god of decadence to basically be watching over them. But I do like a lot because those original creators were big time medieval nerds. So they designed their dungeons to have a lot of function, and it really shows.
Nice.
So it feels like an actual place a stronghold could have been.
Yeah.
The other thing is they give you a list of monsters. They go, don't use all of them, and place them in a way that makes sense. So you're supposed to come up with like the dungeon ecology.
Yeah.
So that was kind
of... And that's not like pre-scripted or anything like that?
Nope, it just gives you the monsters and says, put them where you will, and then add their description into the descriptions of the room as you see fit.
Oh, that's interesting.
They also give you they only have a couple pieces of treasure that are automatically placed in the game. And everything else, they give you like a list of, I think it's like 36 treasures or something like that. And they're like, place between 15 and 20 of these treasures. Don't you place all of them. And put them in rooms. If there's no monsters guarding them, then have the treasure hidden based upon the room description, and if there is a monster guarding it, determine why it's guarding it, whether it's witting or unwittingly guarding it.
Interesting. What are the types of monsters you have in that?
In this adventure, they had orcs, goblins, kobolds, a giant black widow, giant crab spiders, giant rats, troglodytes, gnomes, and skeletons and zombies.
And those just all like kind of work together in that scenario, or?
Nope. Well, they can if the DM wants them to. What I did is I have the goblins and the kobolds fighting, so I put the kobolds on one side of the dungeon and the goblins on the other. With the hobgoblins hanging out in the armory, because that's where hobgoblins should be.
Yeah.
And then I had the goblins in the statue room just playing all the old games that the people used to play. And then I had the kobolds guarding a specific spot for them. I had the orcs living in the deeper area because they take penalties from sunlight. So I figured the cave system underneath would be better for them. Same with the troglodytes. So they're in separate portions. And then there's a room that's just begging for you to put the giant black widow in because it's a room full of webs.
Okay.
Yeah. So
simple. First choice to make then.
Yep.
First the webs.
And then what I did for this game is the first encounter. There's 5 bodies the characters will come across, and I put a carrion crawler there, which is a giant worm that likes to eat on the dead.
Yeah.
So I added that there at the front, and they caught it eating the bodies of the fallen first party of adventurers who went into this place.
Interesting.
And I kind of like that as a concept, so I went with that. What else do they have in here? They have giant centipedes, ghouls, giant rats, gnomes, and orchard jelly, and yeah, and bandits. And so I do have bandits in my dungeon, and the bandits are actually hiding in a different room. I determined that they were part of the original group of adventurers, and they got separated, and they ran and hid somewhere, and now they're trying to get this treasure that's actually just an illusion.
Oh, that's a whole thing. Those poor guys, and they're like hostile to the adventurers if they come in.
They could be. What they could do though is I will have them roll a reaction roll, which is 2d6 plus any charisma of whoever's speaking. And if it's high enough, they might be indifferent, or they might cut a deal going, if you help us get this treasure, then, we'll split it with you.
That makes sense.
And then it turns out it's not real treasure.
Unfortunate.
Yes. And then I have the gnomes. The gnomes are hiding in the smithy in the first level. They originally lived in the lower levels, but they were driven out by the orcs, and so they will give anyone who helps them a +1 mace.
Nice. And they want to go back to where they came from?
Yes. And so they want the orcs removed.
Okay. Yeah, that all sounds very dynamic and interesting.
Yeah, and that was kind of the original goal of, despite all the problems that old D&D had in terms of like the sensitivity issues, the one thing they did do that was interesting was they tried very hard to represent dungeons as real places that things lived in.
Yeah. And
it was up to the DM to come up with reasons for why those things were there. So like these guys have a treasure room or a trophy room that has all the trophies of times past, and in that trophy room I have a magical item as well, and the skeletons will not attack at all unless something from the library, or not the library, the trophy room is removed, and if that happens, they attack. And so they're used up as guards that way, and they were created by because this stronghold were created by a high-level fighter and a high-level wizard, and they created it to be their personal stronghold, and they've since disappeared, like possibly a decade ago.
Interesting. I think like one thing that always kind of made me wonder about like D&D and settings like that is how like adventurers impact the ecology of the entire world. Because you just like have this like idea that like the common people are like living off like 2 copper coins a day or some shit like that, and then you got like have adventurers who like start out with like 49 gold coins or something like that. That always made me wonder how like that works together.
How they represent it in this game is that's supposed to be like a representation of an entire lifetime's worth of wealth.
Yeah.
Whether that's inheritance or just lucking out in the right kind of family.
Yeah.
Which I think works. With Dungeon Crawl Classics, it doesn't work that way. You roll, I think it's 3 or 4 d12s, and that's how many copper pieces you start off with.
That's interesting for a system.
And then you start with random objects and items and a random weapon. And then
that is really interesting. Is the item you start with depending on your class or something like that?
Your weapon is. So you have one item that's random, one item that is dependent upon your occupation. So if you're a farmer, you get a farm animal. And I think a pitchfork, which is like a spear in terms of game mechanics. If you're a mercenary, you start off with a little extra gold, and you start off with a longsword, which I think is pretty cool. And you roll up between 3 and 5 characters.
Okay. I think you've mentioned that.
Yeah.
Sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. And old school D&D kind of reminds me of that, because those characters are fragile. You roll your starting health. You don't get max HP at level 1.
Yeah.
So if you're unfortunate, you could start with 1 HP and just be really, really unlucky.
Yeah.
In fact, the fighter in today's game, a dwarf fighter, he had a maximum of 6 hit points, and a kobold stabbed him with a spear, and the kobold rolled a d6 and got a 6. So,
wow.
The dwarf died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No death saves, no nothing. Once you reach level 0 HP, you are dead.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
Yeah, and the whole idea.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say, just like, if that's the point of the game, then I suppose that's a cool concept.
Yeah, the point of it is that you're heroic, and that when you start D&D, especially basic, or both advanced and basic, is that you're the bottom of the totem pole. Like, the thief only has a 1 in 10 chance of being able to hide.
Yeah.
And like a 15% chance of being able to pick locks.
Yeah.
So, you start off very weak, but as you advance, you do become very strong. And I was using what's called Old School Essentials, which is a reprinting of the basic game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a 100% map to map. It's map to map to the original basic and expert set, but the rule cyclopedia included 2 other rule sets. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there, including in saving throws and things like that. But man, is it way easier to learn the rules from this, the Old School Essentials, than it is from the rule cyclopedia in D&D. Even though the rule cyclopedia for old D&D has a more complete set of spells and things like that, but they have the same thing as the V5 book, where it's 3 columns of just sheer information at you, and it's a lot.
Yeah. I think, like, getting into new games when you've never played a game is much harder than getting into games when you're, like, at least have played one game, because I think there's the term of, like, video game literacy, which is like the fact that people who have never ever played a game will have a much harder time picking it up than people who have played games before. It's just universal concepts, and I think that's kind of like a thing with tabletop role-playing games too, because it's like, if you've played one game, it's easier to pick up another game than it is if you've never done it, and so I think that's like a big factor in that.
I can agree with that. And basic D&D is interesting. Like, there's a lot of design concepts in here that are interesting, but you can definitely tell they got, like, roots in wargaming, because the D20 does not solve for everything like later editions of D&D. Like, listening to the door is a roll a D6, and if it's a 1, if you're a normal human, you have to roll a 1. If you're an elf, you get to roll or a thief, you can roll a 1 or a 2. And
that's interesting.
And finding secret doors, you have to explicitly look for secret doors within a 10-foot range, and you have a 1 in 6 chance of finding them. If you fail the roll, you don't get to look there again. Someone else has to try and look if you are confident there's a secret door.
Yeah, I find the basis of a lot of role-playing games and like wargaming is interesting, because it like really is something that's visible in some things.
Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of different dice systems for different things. Like the rogues or the thief in basic D&D, all of their skills are based on the D100. as a percent die, where it's a roll low system. If you're doing an ability check, it's a d20 roll low system. We have to equal your attribute or less. When you're attacking, it's a roll high system.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. It's definitely more engaging that way, because then it's not just like, oh, let me roll my d20 and add some dice. It's like, oh, are you doing this? You got to do this crazy dice roll now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. So they liked it. And I also like, it's something that I think should be implemented in newer editions of D&D, is they have something called exploration turns. A round, like a combat round, is 10 seconds in basic. In all later editions, it's 6 seconds. But what they do now is a exploration turn is 10 minutes. You get to go 3 times your normal speed, and you can make a standard action. And a standard action includes like checking for traps, disabling traps, investigating items, things like that. And that represents 10 minutes of time. So
it sounds like a good way to like have people actually find stuff.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. You can see that old school basic D&D really focused on the exploration aspect of the game a lot more than the combat aspect, where the book explicitly tells you that most of your experience should come from finding treasure, not from killing monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't know was a thing, because I always thought that like the old D&D games were like super hard on the like kill stuff, get money aspect. And
there's some stuff on the kill stuff, but it's very much you run into something that it's that you can't kill, just run. Just run, because the experience isn't worth it. Get around it, find some more treasure, and the non-magical treasure when you leave the dungeon. That was the other thing that was explicitly called out. You don't get your experience until you leave the dungeon.
Okay, that's interesting.
So you cannot level up in the dungeon. You have to level up by leaving. And if you leave, that means there's a chance for monsters to move back into the rooms you've cleared.
Yeah.
And so there's always a risk for wanting to level up versus trying to get through more of the dungeon.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. There's also a lot of... so I'm glad they have a 5e upgrade for the book, because the 5e upgrade labeled all the rooms in Arabic numerals, versus the original adventure, for whatever reason, the rooms are labeled in Roman numerals.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I learned those in high school. I actually took Latin in school.
Oh, did you? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a bad time. I was good at translating because I knew all the like stories that we were translating, but the grammar is a massive clusterfuck. Like there's so many cases and different things that are just complicated as hell. It's not. It's interesting, and I do appreciate that I learned it, because a lot of things from other languages are easier to understand, but it is hard, definitely.
I get that. No, I just... Holy cow, like, who searches a document for Roman numerals? And who was that intuitive for?
Yeah, that really is not intuitive, especially, like, if you could look at, like using a program to search for something where it's like, yes, I'm searching for a V. How many times does that come up in the book?
Yeah,
it's only 2,000 times.
And worse yet, so they did 2 printings of Into the Unknown. And the first one, all the room descriptions are also keyed to Roman numerals. In the second printing, the room descriptions in the adventure proper use Arabic numerals, but all the numbers on the map are still Roman.
Makes me wonder, like, what they were thinking when they were, like, putting up the second printing. Well, like, okay, we're still gonna do, like, we're not gonna fix it entirely, we're just gonna fix one part of it.
I think a genuine part of it was that they didn't have the map drawer, and they didn't have a copy of the map, so they just did a copy-paste job.
Okay.
That's my guess. But the 5e version has the one, so I printed out the 5e version of the map to run this with. But the 5e version of the map doesn't have the grid well defined, so I had to print out the old version anyway to keep track of their movement through the dungeon. But I really like Old School Essentials because it does something... I don't know if every game should do this, but it did a really cool thing where it came in a box set and each mini book covered a specific topic. So they had the core rules that covered all the very basic rules. Then they had the genre book, which covered the fantasy classes, races, and equipment.
Yeah.
Then they had a book of magic, which contained all the spells, a book of monsters, and then a book of treasure. And so if you were playing this at the table and someone needed to look up something for their class while the DM was looking through like some of the main rules, they could hand them the class book without having to stop looking at the rules they were looking at.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a clever design choice.
Yeah. I mean, for me, running Werewolf, the Vampire core book is just the Book of Monsters, so...
That's fair. How is your Werewolf game going, by the way? It's been a while since we talked about it.
Pretty good, pretty good. We're actually playing tomorrow. And there's the Philodox of the pack has a trial upcoming as their ranked challenge. Everyone else is already good in that part because they just beat a pack of like Spiral Dancers and all that. Told you about the like what's the word? Discount brand Magic the Gathering thing. Yeah, that's still the part where we're like on. They got the card, they tried to enter the Corex for the information. They went to the warehouse. They fought the Black Spell Dancers. There was a whole thing with the pack patron spirit of the Black Spell Dancers blessing the area with supernatural darkness so no one could see anything. Obviously the Black Spell Dancers all have the Ears of the Bat, and it was an interesting. You had two Black Spell Dancers with guns and silver bullets, and then one of the Black Spell Dancers, the Paxaroon, was just glowing dark with radioactive glyphs on his body, and it was actually a pretty funny situation because you had like the pack went in there, they saw their rune glowing in the dark, and the Scalliard actually was like, "This is so stupid. Why does he glow in the dark? That doesn't make any sense. Is it really that dumb?" And that was the moment that the Paxaroon was hit with a silver bullet, and they realized, okay, maybe they're not that stupid. Maybe this was a distraction. But
funny.
It went pretty well. No one died. Someone almost died. A couple people frenzied, but it was good.
Nice. Yeah, we've got our game this week.
Nice.
For Sunday, and then we're doing a session 0 for whatever other game we're going to do Saturdays.
Nice.
I'm not sure which game I'm going to pick up, but I'm inclined to go with Vampire the Dark Ages.
Nice. I've played that.
Yeah.
I had a storyteller start the Transylvania Chronicles. That was pretty interesting. Didn't get super far, but it was definitely interesting to try.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, those Chronicles are pretty good. They're like pre-written and yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
They're like pre-written, so there's like some stuff you have to adapt obviously, but they're there's a framework for how to do it basically.
Okay. The community content one, the Gates of Damascus, as a community book or content book for Vampire the Dark Ages is really cool.
Nice.
It's easily one of the highest quality community content books I've ever seen in my life.
That's really good.
Yeah. And it's all the key locations in like Syria, things like that. How Syria looked in the Dark Ages. It has a map and just
nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's over 100 pages.
Oh wow, that's a lot. I haven't really
Yeah.
looked at any of the community content for anything but Werewolf. I really should at some point.
Yeah, I mean, and it's only got one writer, which is insane to me, since I'm still working on the Sept of the Sacred Stone, because I write so
Who wrote
slow.
that?
His name is William or James Willoughby.
Okay. Might check that out. That's interesting. Yeah, I like mainly like do werewolf. Like I always check out the new werewolf content on the Storyteller's Vault, but apart from that I don't really look at the all that stuff.
Yeah, I liked from the werewolf side. I really like the 100 Kinfolk series.
Yeah.
It's probably my most used community content book.
Yeah.
Do you have any personal favorites in werewolf community content?
Let me think. I do like the Hunter's Armory, which is not werewolf specific, but it is werewolf related. There is let me just open that. Riot of the Flesh.
I do have that one. I like that one a lot too.
Yeah, by Holden Shearer. That one's pretty good. It's got like some Fomorian stuff like that, which is good. There's the Rage Across Pindorama one, which is also really good. It's very in depth. It's a look at the world of darkness in Brazil and South America in general, from a like, yes, from the perspective of someone who's just never been there, basically.
Okay.
And I think it's pretty good.
That's pretty cool.
And there's the Random Encounters one.
That one.
By I'm just looking through those. That one's written by Lucas Jaspert. That one's pretty good because it's got like random encounters, which is something that I didn't think I needed for World of Darkness, but it's actually pretty decent because it's basically just like it's got stuff like law enforcement, lost people, out of town driver, and it's just random things you can just like spice into your game. Like I've used it, for example, it was actually really funny because I used this where my player pack was, they were feeling paranoid and they were feeling they were being followed and they were not actually followed, but they were feeling they were, and I rolled on the random encounter thing and I got like a mom who's like trying to pick up her son and she's just driving around the block a couple times looking for her son, and they're like, my players were like, oh my god, they're following us. And I'm like, it's just some suburban mom looking for her son, but okay. I didn't tell them that, so it was pretty interesting.
That's kind of fun. You don't think about random encounters, but they do add to a lot of games, like way more games than you'd think.
Yeah.
Have you looked at Axis Brasilis?
I don't think so. What's that?
It is a book from someone in South America who did not like how Rage Across Brazil basically portrayed them, and so they decided to create the Umbralscape for Brazil.
Interesting.
And so they have spirits and totems. They have the Umbralscape, the state of the Garu there, things like that. It's really cool. They've got like the maimed wolf, capybara, spiritual alliances between things.
That's the book I was talking about, the Rage Across Panorama, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it's Axis Brasilis from me. So, who
they
wrote
changed the name?
No, I think it's a different book.
By de Mora?
Nope, different people.
That's interesting. I thought, huh? I'm like, because the main wolf ones are also in this one.
I think two different interpretations of it.
That's possible.
Yeah, they have Brazilian totems, and they have harpy, capybara, Mother Africa, swallow,
Nice.
Dom. Man, I can't even pronounce English words, so I'm going to probably butcher this. Dom Sebastiano, King Thunder, Howler Monkey.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it 100% focuses on the spiritual side, which is good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's Rage Across Route 1 by Josh Heath. And I'm not plugging that because I wrote for it.
Yeah, I saw that one. That one looked really interesting.
Yeah.
I did. I think I got one of the books from the Year of the Road. Is it called?
Yeah, it's Year of the Road.
I can't find it right now. Yeah, I really like that there's just such an active community of people writing things. I was gonna say earlier, like it's really interesting to me that there's such a diverse community in like South America and Brazil in particular. Because the game that I play in as a player also is, I guess, run by a Brazilian person and her. So it's kind of interesting to me, like, because in Germany we have a community. It definitely exists, but it's not as online, I guess. Like I see a lot of things going on in South America online, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I wish Raphael was able to jump on because he's in Brazil, and we talked to him in the GM talks, and he was talking about how World of Darkness really kind of kicked off there. So, no, it's an interesting community, and they all seem really passionate, and I love talking to all of them when they comment. Brazil, I think, is the second largest country that follows the Facebook page. Still
interesting.
The first being, of course, America, just because I'm American.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me check our analytics real quick. I'm kind of curious. Yeah, so from our likes, currently we have 351 likes in America. And then second place is Brazil with 144.
It's a lot of people. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought so. I was really... And if we go
how many you got from Germany?
Let's see. Let's go to Germany. Germany's just below Mexico and Canada with 18.
Interesting.
We got little spatterings everywhere. We got 9 in Spain, 4 in Hungary, 2 in Macedonia, 2 in the Czech Republic, 1 in New Zealand, 1 in Algeria, 1 in the United Arab Emirates.
Interesting.
Yeah. And because I reached out to the woman who did the art for the page cover to come on GM Talks, but apparently she wasn't comfortable with that, so which is fine. It was kind of neat though, hearing about all that stuff. But yeah, I reach out to people all the time. I really liked the one with Dave, the guy who wrote Everlore. He was pretty cool, and he was very passionate about his game.
Yeah, that's really good. I love when people are just passionate about what they do and what they write. It's always a good time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I had a lot of... I always love hearing from them. It's always real fun. The big one, though, yeah, everyone for my my work group, like, most of them are well over 40, and some are pushing 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
And it was the first time ever playing, and they just got into it. It was kind of endearing, actually.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Never too late to start. You catch up on the podcast yet?
Still haven't fully. I have the tab like constantly open in my browser. I have this ADHD thing where I've just got like 20 tabs open at all times, and I have that tab open, but I just sometimes I don't really come to it a lot of the time.
That's okay.
Let me check what episode I'm on. I think it's like 40 or something.
Okay, so you're not too far behind then.
Yeah, still got a bit to catch up.
Yeah.
But I'm trying. I think like one issue is that I heard that YouTube was gonna turn off the function where you can like watch with subtitles that are automatically generated or something like that.
It really? Huh.
Yeah. That's supposedly supposed to happen. A lot of people, there was a petition going on. A lot of people were very unhappy about it. So we'll see how that actually goes.
Yeah, I heard nothing about that. That's interesting. Yeah, we've got our whole 92 subscribers on YouTube and our whole, I think 11? Yeah, 11 followers on Podbean.
Nice.
As we slowly grow the channel.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're on 40, which one is 40 episodes? Episode list.
It's Departure.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yes.
still behind my own GM talk.
Yeah, the Departure's a pretty fun one. The 0.5 right after it is one I really had fun with, recording with Jade and her character Morgan, because that's her one-on-one game.
Nice. Yeah, I've also been doing some one-on-one session for my game. It's interesting.
Yeah? How's it going?
So I'm thinking, okay, so I don't think this player is gonna watch this, but one of the player characters in my game is a Fianna, and her backstory is that she has spirit heritage and is related to the Lady of the Lake, but she also has somewhere in her ancestry a Gural, and that Gural is still kind of alive and sleeping. Except that the small island that this is under is what is nowadays known as Anthrax Island, which is a island off the coast of somewhere off the coast of Britain that the British government used to test bioweapons on. And that's gonna be a whole plot line. I think it's gonna be pretty bad, but in a good way.
Yeah.
And for another player, their mentor is a Silent Strider. They're Bonor, but the mentor is a Silent Strider, and their deed name until now was Layla Leechfoe. But they never actually fought a vampire before. That's just the deed name because they like their mentor is like telling them that like vampires are the devil and all that. And then like I sort of had a whole like a tiny subplot, and the end result is that Layla is now kind of dating a vampire. It's gonna be interesting. The vampire is morally not repugnant. The vampire is a caitiff, a fairly high generation caitiff that's pretty chill. She's basically just trying to get by, trying to like drink as little blood as possible without frenzying, and trying to not like kill people or like abuse people basically. So she's morally speaking not like a terrible vampire, but she's still a vampire, and like obviously it's debatable whether or not vampires can live without being abusive parasites. But basically she's now dating that Bonor, and the thing is that the timeline for this game kind of diverged at that point, because the story with the vampire girlfriend is a bit farther into the future than the main plot is right now, for subplot reasons. And so after we wrap up with this plot that we're having right now, with the trial and everything and the rank challenges, then we're gonna like just jump a bit into the future to the point where Layla has to tell her pack that she kind of saved a vampire and almost killed another Bonor who was trying to kill her vampire friend. So that's gonna be interesting. This Bonor was a foster in I think Galliard, and he was basically trying to save face by saying he was ambushed by a pack of black spell dancers and a whole pack of vampires, when he was actually just fighting a Goliath werewolf and a single caitiff vampire that was already bleeding out on the floor. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll go. I'm kind of trying to like get a moral side to it, where it's like cultural bias is a thing, and that like morally right or wrong isn't necessarily a black and white thing. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. No, that sounds like it'll be interesting. I got a couple plans. Got to reshuffle some others, but yeah, it'll be interesting for our game as well. They're almost done in Denver, I think.
Yeah, the player pack in my game just came from Germany. Then went to some small village in Russia to fight a thunderworm. Then went back home to Moscow, and now they're in Moscow doing stuff there. And there's like a big plot coming up in South America. There's another big plot in Siberia. And they also got to go back to Germany at some point. Which is going to be interesting because they kind of wanted for aggravated assault on a police officer, but that's I think they kind of forgot that, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Okay.
The I think I told you that like the pack follows the patron spirit Mother Anarchy, so everyone in the pack is a anarchist, and everyone kind of does not like police. It sort of is a thing where like whenever they get like in contact with police, there'll be one person who's like, okay, we should try to be polite, and everyone else is kind of like, no. But it's interesting, so we'll see how that goes in Germany.
Yeah, I'm playing with the idea. I don't know how I'll implement it in the story, but playing with an idea about how the system of policing hurts police officers at the same time, especially in America, and showing that kind of double-edged sword because in America, you don't necessarily need a degree to be a police officer, so it's one of the few very high-paying professions without the need of debt.
Yeah.
And so I'm playing with the idea of the worm festering in police departments, and then the few people who want to get out can't, because if they do, they lose their home, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty real thing in real life, as far as I know. Like, exactly. I know that says police officers are not obligated to know the laws they're enforcing, which is one thing. Supreme Court decided that. So I think that'd be interesting to look at in the World of Darkness, in that perspective.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that you play with the idea of Herculean firearms lobbying to continue militarizing the police, and there being a push for it, right? And that you get into this thing where you see the worm festering because someone's trying to juggle so many balls in the air.
Yeah. Oh, I just remembered something that you and me both had a similar idea, and I think we had it independently from each other, because I had the idea, and then I listened to the podcast and you had a similar idea, because in my game there's Siren and Swan Cosmetics who are producing deodorants and perfumes that make people temporarily smell of the worm, and you had the thing with the medicine and the pills and all that. Similar. Interesting.
I can't claim that idea. That idea actually is in the subsidiaries guide to Pentex under Magadon.
Oh, interesting.
It's also in the Book of the Worm.
Read that.
I think it's in the Book of the Worm briefly as Worm Fox or Fox
Worm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same with the combining chemicals. That's from the subsidiaries guide. If you are to get the two books I recommend anyone who wants to play Werewolf get, besides the core book, obviously, from the older editions, is the Revised Storyteller's Guide, or Storyteller's Handbook. Sorry, not the guide. They're two separate books. The Handbook and the Subsidiaries, A Guide to Pentex, because it gives a breakdown of every subsidiary, gives you plot ideas. Does a great job blending real world lobbying with supernatural cabal stuff.
Yeah.
It is just simply one of the most well-constructed books for the series.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good books that are like kind of overlooked. I think my favorite werewolf book of all is the book The City, which is just, I cannot recommend this enough. It's so good. I think I might have talked about that when talking about personal stuff.
Yeah.
So one thing that happens when you go on estrogen hormone therapy is that you like start getting more emotional about certain things, not in the way that like misogynists will tell you, but just in the way that you like sometimes have an easier access to emotions. And there's a part of that Book of the City where there's a like a fluff story, and that story has locations. It's about a pack of Garou who are in the city, and they're kind of lost there by drones, by Weaver drones, and the pack's alpha dies, and he tells the Lupus to run and tell the Karen what's happening. And there's just this like vivid description of the alpha dying and telling the other one to run, and you just like have this language that's incredibly emotional, and it's so well written. And the book is just like a lot of good, very, very good fluff, a lot of very good plot hooks.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
My favorite book in general, like of all werewolf books.
Nice.
And like the drones and the Men in Black are in general one of my favorite things in Werewolf, because I like the Weaver more as an antagonist than the Worm.
I like to blend and play with. But yeah, Josh Heath, actually, he runs Werewolf the podcast. And I was talking to him, and I was asking him what things he found surprising in all of his werewolf book reviews. And he had mentioned the biggest one is how many bad books there were in first edition and early second.
Oh, yeah?
Because he said that he grew up with it. He remembers being super hyped into Werewolf and just being like, this is the greatest setting ever. It's all interconnected, all this. And then he went, and that's because I kept revisiting the good books.
Yeah, I suppose that's a big thing. That's how like nostalgia and everything works. Because you just like build this reputation where you think about something.
But I'm sorry, I interrupted. What was your question?
I was gonna ask, what do you think are the worst books?
From my experience, I think the first edition Utena book is awful.
Why is it awful?
Like, it's poorly thought out. They do a lot of Noble Savage stuff that isn't great. The in-character dialogue's not the worst. It's very clearly written by a bunch of white guys trying to play up minorities. Like there's a whole moot at one point, and they're talking about their lost past, and this one guy stands and is like, "We gotta stop complaining. I'm a black man in America, and we've also suffered, but now is our time to move on and join with the others. Da da da. You think the natives suffered? We had the lash of slavery." And I'm like, "Whoa, dude." Okay. You're getting into oppression Olympics, and then there's a gift in there that like even if it was a 5-star book, that would have dropped it down to a 3 just for the 3 or a 2 out of 5 just for the inclusion of this one gift.
What does it do?
It allows an Utena to go on a forced march.
That's enough. Culturally extremely insensitive. Like, holy fuck.
Yeah, it's bad. Like, you get to that gift and you're just like, holy fuck, what the fuck were they thinking?
Yeah. That's a thing where you like think, who wrote this and who thought this was okay?
Yeah, obviously Gypsy's a terrible book. It's got a bad concept and it's poorly written. Like, it's disjointed. Yeah. It's not an engaging read. It doesn't even have good story hook ideas that you can that you can't divorce from the concept, nor would you want to use them anyway. The Ways of the Wolf is a really bad book. It's a lot of old, bad pseudoscience on wolves to help people understand how lupus think, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And it's not a great book. It's not fun. It's not entertaining. It doesn't add anything, and later books did a much better job of it, so it's not worth reading.
Yeah.
I think, let me see. Josh did his review, and he said, what was it? Ghost Towns was terrible. I haven't read Ghost Towns, but I believe him.
I actually own that. I've
Oh,
never
really?
read it, I think.
It's apparently supposed to be a Wraith Werewolf the Wild West crossover book, and it's terrible. It's super whitewashed. It's really culturally insensitive, and that makes it worse in this case simply because this was when White Wolf was starting to figure its shit out, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one I was thinking of. The Storyteller's Companion is okay. It's for Revised Edition Werewolf. And it's important only because this has information on how to play the Stargazers, because it was in Revised after they had left the Garu Nation. They have the tribal weaknesses, which I've tried to implement, and they're just not fun. So, nor worth it. So I don't recommend them. They have examples of changing breeds as antagonists with stats, random animals, just weird things, and then they give you Karens, like the size of Karens, how big Karens are, but all this stuff's already recovered in better books. And so it's a short book. It's just not well formatted. It's just okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
with Ghost Towns, I own that. I don't know why I own that. I don't know why I thought I should buy it. But I have it as
Okay.
a PDF. That is, I don't have it physically.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, the concept sounds cool, right? Like werewolves dealing with ghosts in the Wild West, or dealing with the ghosts of like possibly like Native Americans or something like that. That's a cool concept, but man, does it drop like a whole lot of balls, and it's just not good. Let me see.
Yeah, there are some books that are just not great.
Yeah. Let's see.
Just looking over my books, I'm thinking about like all the comics in the books, because there are some that are great. Have you read the Nazi book and the intro comic?
I've read the intro comic. I have not read the full book though.
The intro comic is just so iconic. Like mutant spider woman in a prom dress eating her mom. Okay.
Yes, I mean
that's a concept we needed. All right.
Yep.
Very cool.
And it sets the tone of the whole like spider changers, from my understanding.
Yeah, and they're just like, they're very alien, and I think that makes a lot of sense, like for them to be like that, like that.
No, I totally agree. The other book that I do not recommend, Children of Gyre, are one of the very few tribe books where the first edition book is better than the revised edition.
Yeah, I've heard about the second edition one where it's like the weird rights and everything. Yeah, I remember that.
Weird rights. Once again, it's obviously like a bunch of straight dudes trying to write gay characters.
Yeah.
Like, there's a line that sticks with me because it was such an odd and like almost creepy line where there are two Garu in love. They're both male, and one is Lupus born, one is Hamid born, and the Lupus born goes off and tries to pretend basically to be the guy's dog on occasion when needed, especially if they're in a super crowded car. And
that is such an awful concept. I know that's a fetish, and I hate that.
But that's not even the worst part, because it wasn't fetishizing the dog thing. What the part was fetishizing was like they were in the park just lying down, and the Lupus-born goes over and rests his head in his Hamid-born lover's lap, and the Hamid-born, and it's written from the perspective of the Hamid-born, and the Hamid-born's thought process was, if we were both human, people would be giving us funny looks. Now it's like we can be ourselves in public, and it's just like, woof.
Bruh. I hate that. It's just, it's not. There's some really bad things in the books, really.
Like, I will give them credit for trying when no one else did. But
Yeah.
man, is it a hard read going back to 20 years after the fact.
Also, just conceptually, the idea that like, you know, I'm a dog right now, and that's more acceptable than me if I was a human man. And it's just like, I don't like the implications of that. Like, I really don't like the implications.
Yeah, neither do I. It's just, it's such a rough listen, or such a rough read. I'm sorry, and it's just like, good lord.
Yeah.
I don't know. I had issues with it.
I think like another book that's like not entirely terrible, but also not like super good, is Rage Across Russia, which I've used a lot. Or actually, I was intending to use it a lot for my Werewolf game, and then I just kind of went, okay, I'm just gonna make everything myself, because it's just not that good. Like it's very obvious that it was written by Americans.
Mm-hmm.
With the fact that some of the names don't even make sense in Russian. Well,
Yeah.
like in Russian traditionally, you have your father's name in your name, and they just don't do that for some characters, and for some they do, and for some they make it in a way that doesn't make sense. It's some things in it are good and some are just terrible, and I think one of the things that bothered me the most, the Shadow Curtain in World of Darkness Russia.
Mm-hmm.
The basic idea is that when the Soviet Union was started and Baba Yaga took over, she basically built a supernatural wall that basically made it that no one could get in or out. So basically all the supernaturals are trapped in there. This includes werewolves, this includes mages, I think includes mages, this includes vampires. They're all in there, and what's inside can't go out, and what's outside can't come in, and it's also really difficult to communicate that's through it and everything. And why she did that was to like contain it and be able to, and that's kind of like the thing that basically made World of Darkness Russia super isolated supernaturally, even more so than it would have been if just there was like, you know, Soviet Union, closed borders, whatever. And that just is a really weird concept to me because I don't understand it from a world building perspective, because it makes it impossible for you to use the things in this book unless you have your entire game set in this area and nowhere else, because it also can't go out. And then obviously like the thing that like Baba Yaga was killed, maybe she's still around, who knows, but the Shadow Curtain fell and everything, and that just seems like a thing that should be something the player characters are involved in. It seems weird to have this huge plot thing and you just like say, okay, you're starting your game, yeah, this just happened, a huge thing, this Mai was slain and the Shadow Curtain fell and also like a bunch of cairns were just destroyed, and it's just like, why are you doing this as a prologue and as a way to set up a game? Why are you not doing this in your game? That would make so much more sense.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure if the Shadow Curtain thing was an adventure in a later books, just because I know Rage Across the Heavens, it was all about the perfect metis and things like that, and then when you get to the revised book, it's like, a pack of Garu found this baby.
Oh, I don't know about that actually, but I didn't think so, because Rage Across Russia is one of the only books that is about this. So I'm not sure if it's not somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's a couple crossover books. Like there's a whole book about it's a vampire and werewolf adventure book, and you get to run the adventure from the vampire perspective, and you get to run the adventure from the werewolf perspective, where the vampires are doing like their meetings and things like that. And then something basically triggers all the werewolves, and they bust into the succubus club, and they fuck everything up. And it is the prelude to Chicago by Night 2nd edition, because the werewolves go in and they destroy everything.
Interesting. Yeah, I looked it up. I looked up the Shadow Curtain on the White Wolf wiki, and it is apparently mentioned in Knights of Prophecy for Vampire and World of Darkness, the World of Darkness second edition. So maybe there is explained more.
Probably that's what my guess is.
Yeah,
Because second
another book
edition.
that I. Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
no, you go.
Oh, second edition starts. It was the edition when they started to get really crossover happy, and then revised edition is when they put the brakes on it a little bit, going, "Oh, wow, getting these things to cross over is actually kind of hard."
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of perspective and good ways to do crossover, but a forced crossover can sometimes be harmful.
Yeah, that's like Samuel Haight.
Yeah, I really like though that like you just every supernatural has this like completely false and fake idea of what the other supernaturals are. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the changelings say that the Garou are actually changelings who forgot the dreaming, and it's like okay, and then like the vampires are like, actually, Garou stem from the Gangrel tribe. When you have the werewolves, so like, actually, vampires are just blood for Mori, and it's like, okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
they're creatures of the Weaver that got corrupted by the worm.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, no, it is interesting. I do like some crossover stuff. I like bringing stuff over. I think I will implement some more technocracy stuff. I know they don't listen to this, so it's okay. I can say as much as I want.
I love the technocracy, and I've actually made. So what I did for the crossover is that I said the technocracy works for the Weaver because it just makes sense for me. I don't like them being separate, but I
Hmm.
just like use stuff from the technocracy and like technocratic mages as Weaver spawn as followers and servants of the Weaver, and I really like that conceptually.
Yeah, I like them being separate. I like the idea of the Weaver not being directly involved. That the technocracy's goals are explicitly for the Weaver, but not out of any conscious desire. The very concept of progress, no matter what, and no matter who you tread upon, just sounds like a really really cool concept. And I think it adds more
Yeah,
to the settings, only because it creates a dynamic where the technocracy um, are unknowing. So what do you do to try and correct that? How do you change minds, right?
the question for me would be how are they still unknowing because they're doing a lot of research, you know?
They do a lot of research, but they don't believe in anything supernatural. So they could believe that there is a great spider in another dimension that's all about stasis, but that's another dimension. That's not here. And though things correlate, what it could be is that they think that they're making the Weaver stronger simply because of their actions here, and they're shaping another dimension, not that the Weaver is shaping this dimension.
Yeah,
It's kind of like DNA, right? Like DNA does tons of research on werewolves, but they don't believe in any of the spiritual side of it.
yeah.
And so that's kind of my take for that anyway.
Yeah, I think it's just a thing that like you can do the way you want to, and it works. Like I can see it working the way you're doing, and I can see it working in other ways. I can see it working the way that I'm doing. I can see it working in different ways. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's why I like sharing ideas, and that's why I wanted to set up GM talks to begin with,
Yeah,
because I do like sharing those kinds of ideas. The uh, the other one I started rereading is the Red Talon revised tribe book. I haven't read the first edition one yet, but I do remember really liking the revised tribe book.
what is it like? Like what's
It's
good about it?
the first book or the first chapter is from the perspective of a Red Talon. It's all in Red Talon perspective character where they talk about how the concept of linear time or the measurement of linear time is part of the human brain. The wolf heart doesn't need that. And so they believe in talking about the time before today. And if they need to be more specific, they'll say, like, the time before today and after, and then they'll use an event. So all of their chronology is based on events.
Interesting.
And it's written to talk, and then they have this sidebar by this Red Talon who lost their ability to howl, even though they're a Galliard. And so they sing and they tell their stories through body language.
I like that concept a lot.
Yeah, and so they'll do the stares to the other Galliards. It'll listen to their howls, and then it'll make a move to evoke sort of additional reactions.
Yeah.
And so it goes through their parts of their history and things like that. And then the second chapter, that's all lore-based, is actually written from the perspective of a Hamid Shadow Lord who lied about his breed. And because Red Talons don't really get lying, they're just like, okay, you're a weird lupus, but whatever. And so he goes into their cairn to study them for the Margrave.
Yeah.
And so he talks about how they view other tribes. And my favorite one is their view of the child of Gaia, or the children of Gaia. Because the Red Talons are very much based on first impressions.
Yeah.
And so he says, the Red Talons are split pretty 50-50 on children of Gaia. Half view them as human-loving whelps, and the other half view them as noble and powerful warriors of Gaia.
Yeah.
With no in-between.
I can see that.
I also like the Shadow Lord one, just because it's one of the funniest, like unironically funniest lines in the whole book, which is he talks about his own experience going into the cairn, and essentially he shows up in a Red Talon and is like, "Elder, a Shadow Lord is here," and the Elder turns and goes, "What does it want?" And I just found that very funny.
Yeah, I like that. Like some of the books just have those unexpected funny moments.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great little bit because you need to break it up every now and then.
Yeah.
I remember going through all the revised. The Get revised book is pretty good. I do like some of the changes a lot. I like all of the changes, like where they slaughter the swords of Heimdall.
Yeah.
The Fianna one's better for revised too because they acknowledge Celtic traditions other than the Irish, the Welsh, etc., as well as claiming that their tribe had many names, and Fianna only stuck solely because of the Irish ones, and that's why the tribe is so painted by Irish color, or the Irish kind of like swath. I thought was kind of a cool concept. They also removed the whole IRA angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think that was a good call. That was especially because that book was coming out post 9/11.
Yeah, I read the sidebar. I remember reading that where they were like, "We're actually not gonna do that anymore."
Yeah.
And I do think it's a bit comical that they only do that when something may have happened in America. But I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, I wish, like, and the thing is though, they did it well in other places. Like, they did the whole, Hitler wasn't a vampire, Hitler wasn't a ghoul, Hitler wasn't supernatural in Berlin by Night. They're like, Hitler was just a monstrous man. You do not have to be supernatural to do these monstrous things, and to associate every horrible thing in history to the supernatural lessens those real-world horrors. And I'm like, finally, they get it.
Yeah.
And then V5 had to do the Georgia thing. No, not Georgia. Can't remember the country now.
Chechnya.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Though the Berlin by Night also has like a vampire Himmler, I think. I remember
really?
that right.
Okay.
Yeah, he was embraced after the fact though.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, yeah, Hitler wasn't a vampire, but actually the dude who made all the Nazi propaganda, he was.
Oh, do they do Gerbil? Okay. Okay. Oh, Lord. Well, baby steps, I guess. Actually, with that Gen Con thing I went to with the researching history for your own games, Eddie Webb, who did write for Vampire, Werewolf, etc., said, yeah, for writing these sort of history things, basically just look at how World of Darkness did it, and then just don't do that.
Yeah.
So which is fair. Oh, goodness.
Can I say a final concept?
Sure.
That I thought of earlier. Glasswalker Ragabash, who's an e-girl Twitch streamer. That's all.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Very nice.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me. It's always good to talk. I always enjoy our conversations, and I enjoy your passion for the hobby.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, this is Keegan for GM Talks, and we will catch you next time. Bye.